All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for being here. We're really excited to have you. I'm Laurel Kagan, Marketing Director at Live Urban Real Estate. And we have some really great guests today for our Home Buying Made Simple Live and Learn. We have Nicole Ruth from the Ruth Group at Fairway Mortgage. And we also have Ryan Belinek and Kimberly Beck from Live Urban Real Estate. And the three of them are going to provide you guys with a really great presentation and lots of things to learn. So without further ado, take it away, guys.
So Ryan or Kim, I don't know if you want to get started or if we want to start out with the slideshow, but I know that we have so much to talk about. It's such an incredible time to be both a home buyer and a home seller. And I know this market and there's so much going on in our environment around us, but oh, sorry. I saw the presentation slide come up and I was like, I'm not sure I should be talking, but in spite of all of it, or maybe because of it, the home has become the most important place to all of us. And so as a first-time home buyer, it can be awfully scary to jump in, especially if you don't know what you're jumping into, which I know why Ryan and Kimberly are so amazing at what they do. And I don't know if Ryan or Kimberly, if you guys want to get started before I hop into some of the lending side, but I want to make sure that all the first-time home buyers or the folks that are joining us today know kind of how special this time really is.
Well, thanks so much for that, Nicole, and thank everybody for joining us for sure. I can't echo what you say enough. Certainly for both Kim and I think anytime anybody buys a home, whether they bought 10 homes or, your first home, the process is a very special process. And I think, sometimes people try to like shotgun through the process and don't really understand fully what they're doing. And for us, kind of the education piece of start to finish, what to expect, but on a broader scope, the education of what's happening in the market, the education of home ownership, all of those different things are just one of the things in our business that we celebrate the most. So we are super, super excited to get to share just some of what we deal with, offer some points and pointers, and I'll let Kim add her thoughts on that as well.
Sure. So, just to echo what both Nicole and Ryan have said, we are in somewhat of a scary time. And when you're thinking about buying a home, you are both excited and probably a little fearful because you don't know where to start. So we are going to break it down very simple. If you have questions, no question is a dumb question. So feel free to send those in. So basically, what does a realtor do for you? And what I wanted to start with is explaining the difference between, you probably hear, I'm a real estate agent and I'm a realtor. There's a difference. At Live Urban, we are all realtors. What does that mean? It means that we belong to the National Association of Realtors, and we have to take a certain amount of continuing education every year, and we also have to abide by a code of ethics and a standard of practice. So that sets us apart right away. And so the obvious things that realtors can do for you is help you search for homes, set up a home search. The most important thing before you get out and start looking, especially now during COVID, is having a good lender sit down with you, look at your finances, and get you a pre-approval. We can't go look at homes during COVID, or shouldn't. I know there's some people doing it, without knowing that our buyers are ready to go and have a pre-approval. So we help you get connected with a great lender like Nicole, and she can get that together for us. Once we have that, we can hit the road, obviously following all of the COVID guidelines, separate cars, gloves and masks, and that is what we're here for, to sit down with you and select a search area, find out what you want in a home. So that would be the second step. The third step is, we are writing the contracts and managing the deadlines. We will help you get set up with an inspector, which you're going to need for your home. And then we follow that all the way through from the beginning to the end. And we can recommend other professionals, but primarily we're going to make sure you're lined up with a good inspector to make sure that property that you're purchasing is a good home and it doesn't have too much that you need to do with it, because there'll be other costs associated with buying the home. And so you want to know what you're getting into as far as repairs or what does it need. And then we're just there basically to keep the contract, the timeline of the contract moving forward to the end, and also helping you through any kind of setbacks. We've seen quite a few. Especially now with COVID, we've just kind of had to circle around and learn how we need to do things a little differently. And so that's a little bit about what a realtor can do for you. Ryan, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think
there we are.
you know, obviously just chatting about kind of how we can help and how we can assist, which actually kind of brings me to the point where I want to springboard into Nicole to talk about one of the things that I think is probably at the forefront of anybody's mind, whether you're thinking of buying, again, your first home or potentially, you know, a second or third home, is the cost. And talking about, like, what are we seeing in the market with costs, with interest rates? I know that we hear a lot about that in the news right now as far as interest rates are concerned. So I kind of want to turn it over to Nicole, because I think Kim and I can agree that we think that we're the star players, of course, in any real estate transaction, but really I think the most important person to have on your side if you're going to be financing a portion of the deal is your lender. So I kind of want to kick it over to Nicole to chat through probably what's weighing on everybody's mind first, which is, let's talk money.
Love that. Thank you, Ryan. And absolutely, Kim. I mean, having a strong realtor, strong lender, partner team is really imperative to the success, right? Or it's instrumental in the success, because anybody can buy a home and you can even buy it for sale by owner. But ultimately, who guides you through? Who's that advisor? It'd be like investing in the stock market for the very first time without the advice of a financial planner, or writing a will for the very first time without the advice of legal counsel. Who's there that's got your back, that can advise you as to when the right time is, what the right circumstances are, and what programs and rates and homes and locations? And there's so much wonderfulness to this experience, but can get overwhelming if you don't have that right partnership. So I wanted to chat about a couple of things that Ryan and Kim lined out as far as, you know, from their perspective, what as a first-time home buyer are we seeing are the biggest question marks when it comes to the loan side. And I loved how they broke this out. You know, what are the types of loan programs that are available? What is down payment versus earnest money, which is really kind of it seems like it should be straightforward, but it never is. So how do those two play in together? Out-of-pocket costs, ways to improve your credit, and questions you should be asking. So we're gonna rip through these relatively quickly, but please do ask any questions in the chat. We'll be watching those as well for all of our parts, for Ryan, for Kim, for myself. If you have any questions, please ask. This is your time. But types of loan products available. Let's quickly stop there for just a moment. You hear about them all the time, but what's the difference, right? So what's the difference between a conventional loan and an FHA, a VA, a USDA, a jumbo loan? How does that partner in? So let's start out with the Govy loans, because those are kind of easiest to identify. A VA loan is going to be for a veteran and or their spouse. Can't be any other members. I get that question all the time. Can my brother, can my girlfriend go on the loan? It's a veteran and their spouse. You can have a non-spouse as a borrower, but they have to put money down. So it kind of changes the parameters of the loan. A USDA loan is specific by income and location. So it's going to be in the rural areas. So again, it's a very specific loan. FHA is more general. In fact, it was the first quote unquote first-time home buyer program that allowed for some bumps and bruises in your credit. It allows for a lower credit score. It allows for more recent bankruptcy and foreclosure, and allows you to get into a home for as little as 3.5% down. You add on a down payment assistance program, and you can actually get into a home with very little down payment, but there's still the closing costs. And I'm going to go over that in just a second. And then there's conventional. Conventional used to be right out of the gate, it was 20% down. It was more of your standard savings and loan or bank loans. And then over time, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have made it more accessible, where now you can get a loan with as little as 3% down as a first-time home buyer, 5% down as a move-up buyer. And it usually has really strong interest rates the better credit you have, and it has mortgage insurance only if you're putting less than 20% down. A conventional loan turns into a jumbo loan over the conforming loan limit. In all of America, that's $510,000. In metro areas around Denver, it's $575,000. And then in some other areas, like high cost areas, it even goes higher than that. So that's where it gets a little more sticky. You've got to have more employment history, better credit, more reserves. It's a higher cost loan, so it's going to have more restrictions around it. So definitely work with your lender if you're looking at that $800,000 or $750,000 home and you need that jumbo loan. You want to know what those restrictions are up front, because they can be cumbersome and might even kick you out of eligibility if you don't have all the reserves and the history. So then down payment versus earnest money, and then we'll talk about cash to close too. So especially when you're talking with first-time home buyer down payment assistance, people will often think that you could do that with no money down. But it's really the no money down part, the down payment. So there's 3 buckets of financing when you think about this. There's the loan. Well, let's start out with the purchase price. There's the purchase price that is broken out into the down payment and the loan amount. So if I'm going to put, say, 5% down, and we'll go really easy math. If we're doing a $400,000 purchase price, 10% down, that's $40,000 down payment and a $360,000 loan. Now I have an earnest money check. That earnest money holds the house. So it's kind of like saying my intention is to go through with this contract. Here's a check maybe for $5,000 earnest money. Well, the title company holds that earnest money, and that's applied towards that $40,000 down payment. So now instead of $40,000 at the closing table, I only have to come to the closing table with $35,000. So that's helpful. But now I have closing costs too. And the closing costs can run anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000, depending on. So the hard costs are going to be your lender fees, your appraisal fee, and your title fees. And those are going to run anywhere between $3,000 and $4,000, depending on the lender you're working with in the scenario. But additionally, you're going to have what's called prepaids, and that's your first year of homeowners insurance up front. Because those insurance companies, they want to be paid up front to know that in case something happens and that house burns down, that it's all taken care of and insured. So the insurance is going to be paid at the closing table, and then we set up an escrow account, which is a little bit of taxes and a little bit of insurance every single month, 1/12, as it breaks out, because there's 12 months in the year, goes towards setting aside that savings account that has the word escrow on it with the lender. And that savings account makes sure that those taxes and that insurance bill gets paid every single year for you. So that's the bucket. So a lot of people think, well, it's a no money down program, but really there's still the closing costs, and that earnest money does go towards the down payment. It all kind of rolls together on that final closing disclosure at the closing table, where all of those are lined out and broken out. And then what if I don't have great credit, right? And I want to get the biggest bang for my buck. I want to get the lowest interest rate. What does that look like? Well, if I want to go in and pre-plan, if you will, I want to buy a house. Maybe I want to buy a house in the next couple months. My lease is up maybe January 1st. Talking to a lender now makes a lot of sense, because now I can pull your credit. We can plan. We can talk about how much money you're going to need. We can say, well, you have good credit. Maybe you have a 710 credit score, but the best interest rates are above 740. So what would it take to just get that little nudge? Or maybe you've got a 580 credit score and conventional loans don't start until 620. So now it's a little more imperative. Now we really got to get you up and over that 620 mark so we can get you into a home so you can stop paying your landlord's mortgage and start building your own wealth. Well, that kind of pre-active motion towards building that credit is so helpful to have those conversations early. So we can do that. Fairway Mortgage, and I know other lenders do this as well, where they have credit repair in-house free of charge. And then, of course, there's also credit repair companies. I would definitely talk to your realtor to your lender before signing up with any credit repair company. Some are better than others, and we want to make sure you're protected. But you definitely want to do that. Some easy ways to get your score up is to not open up any new credit cards right before you want to go buy a house. And don't go buy a car right before you want to go buy a house either, unless you want to live in that car, because I've actually had that happen where somebody got a beautiful new brand new truck and it kicked him out of eligibility for a house. And I told him he might just have to sleep in the back of that truck. So pre-planning makes a lot of sense. So you want to make sure, don't go out and spend a lot of money. Don't let a lot of different people for a lot of different services like stores and cars and utilities and all start pulling your credit, because that can ding your score as well. But on the flip side, the government made sense when they said if you have multiple people pull your credit for one service, it counts as one inquiry against your credit score. So if you have multiple lenders pull your credit, find the lender that's right for you. Don't be scared to have more than one lender pull your credit. So that's not going to worry me too much if you do that. Just don't go buy a car and a washing machine and go open up a Kohl's card all within 30 days before buying a house. You also want to keep those balances low. So if I have a credit card that's got a $1,000 limit, I want to keep that balance below $300 at any given time. So getting those balances low, or opposite, maybe call the credit card company and have them increase the limit. That will also help you have that differentiation that will help your credit score. And having different credit, so don't go close cards either. You want to have multiple credit cards, student loans, installment loans. That all bolsters your credit score. If you start closing everything, thinking that you're cleaning up shop, you're actually going to hurt yourself and your score is going to go down. And then what questions should you ask that lender? One is, do they know your realtor? It would be great if you had that partnership. It's not necessary, but it's really good to have that kind of unified front supporting you and having your back. Another good question would be is, how can I expect our communications to go? So would I be talking to you? Would I be talking to your team? How often do you update me? Set expectations, and then get to know your lender. A lot of lenders have similar programs. Some have some unique options, but a lot of them have similar programs. So is this a lender you feel comfortable with? Can you get to know them? Do you feel like they're working in your best interest? You want to make sure you have that relationship. It's not always about rate, although rate is important, and so are their fees. Ask them what their fees are in the transaction. People always say, well, I want to see a whole rate sheet. Well, 99% of it isn't controlled by the lender. It's the title fees and the appraisal and the escrows, but that little bit of lender fee could make a difference. So make sure you know what that is. And of course, asking them their rate is a good idea, but they can't really tell you that until they know your whole story and what programs are best for you, because it really is different from one program to the other or one scenario to another. So getting to know them and having that relationship is key. And then ask them, how long will it take? How long to get pre-qualified? How long to get pre-approved? And then how long will it take to close once I find that perfect home? And then once I close, what can I expect? Do you service the loans? Will I still stay in contact with you? Will you help me if I have any questions or problems? You want to know that that person's going to be around for the long run, not that they didn't just pop up and then they go silent and you can't find them. So with Ryan, with that, and Kim, if you don't have any other questions, I'll turn that over to you, or if you'd like to add to that.
Well, of course I have to chime in.
Please.
I've been sitting here on mute for a little while, so of course I'm just revved up by some of the things that Nicole is saying. But, you know, one of the things that you mentioned, Nicole, which, you know, from our perspective as the realtors is absolutely critical right now, especially in this market, is, you know, does your lender know your realtor? Do they have good communication? But a step beyond that is, will your lender pick up the phone and call a listing agent on your behalf on a home that you're offering on? You know, in many, many, many cases, you know, especially in this market, we're seeing multiple offers. And, you know, there's oftentimes that Kim and I have listings and we have 5 to 10 offers on a property. And I can't tell you what a difference it makes, just from a professional standpoint, to pick up the phone and have a lender identify themselves and say, gosh, you know, I know that obviously this is up to your seller to choose, but I have to tell you about my clients and I've got to tell you about the way that I work. And, You know, we're going to get these people to the finish line, and we're going to advocate. We're going to meet our deadlines. We're going to do those things. You know, you have no idea how much of an advocate your lender actually is. And oftentimes, you know, in competitive situations, a good lender can actually get you ahead of other offers to get you the home.
And Ryan, you bring up a great point. Asking your lender, what are their hours? I mean, because a lot of lenders, if they're working with a bank, they might stop at 5. And inevitably, I think 60% of my offers going in are in evenings or weekends. It's just because that's when buyers typically have availability to go look at homes.
Right.
So making sure that your lender's going to be available when you need them most.
And I'm gonna add one more thing. You know, is your lender available to you, the borrower? And then is your lender available to the realtor? Because, you know, like Nicole mentioned, oftentimes Kim and I are writing offers at, you know, 5 o'clock on a Sunday, or heaven forbid at 8 or 9 o'clock on a Friday, because there's a deadline of like noon on Saturday to get the offer in. And of course, we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that our offers are in. And boy, does it stink when we pick up the phone and try to get a hold of the lender and say, hey, we all need to circle the wagons here to get our clients under contract. And, you know, it's crickets on the end. I actually have to share a story. Kim and I were working a deal one time, and our client, who was the buyer, you know, was under contract. We were trying to get through a couple of negotiations. We were coming up on a couple of really important deadlines in the contract. And, you know, ring, 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 we're trying to reach the lender. The lender didn't respond for like 2 days, didn't respond. And when we finally heard from them, they said, oh, shucks, I've been tearing up some powder up in Vail this weekend, and sorry I wasn't available. And, you know, in this kind of a market, like Kim and I were seething because that answer just doesn't cut it.
No, it's good to know if they're a team, if they're an individual, and the same with real estate agents, right? I know Kim and Ryan, you guys work together so well.
Might add, oh, sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
No, go ahead. I think there's a delay. But Kim and Ryan work so well as a team that when one is out of town, the other one.
I think there's a delay.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with lenders. A lot of lenders today, and not all of us are teams. I'm a team, knowing that we have 3 or 4 stacked behind us each to protect. It's the timing. It's a very competitive market, and being able to get creative. What happens if the appraisal comes in low? What happens if there's a really tight inspection deadline? What if you have to go in with an appraisal gap or an offer to close in 2.5 weeks to win that deal? You want that kind of partnership that has those creative solutions.
Absolutely. So, do we have any questions? I'm not seeing questions pop up, but I'm also not manning the question bar. So if you have any questions as we're talking through this, this is an open forum. So please make sure to just type your questions and we'll make sure to get them as we go.
So Ryan, I think now would be a great time. Yeah, let's keep going. Kimberly.
Kim, are you delayed still? I think so.
Yeah,
so
can you guys hear me okay? I had my Mac isn't opening the meeting, so I'm actually on my phone right now, but I wanted to make sure everybody could hear me okay.
Hey, I'm gonna jump in really quick. We have a question for Nicole in regards to 1099 employed workers.
It looks like we had a question. Looks like we had a question come in.
I adore Kim. So yes, what are the rules for 1099 employees and workers? Because the self-employed have definitely gotten the short straw in all of this. So if you're a 1099 or if you're self-employed, then we're going to be looking at a couple of things. COVID is requiring Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, FHA, they're following the same rules. The only time you might get a different set of rules is if you're going with a portfolio bank, like a First Bank, a Vectra Bank, a Bank of Colorado. But your jumbo lenders and the conforming and Govy loans, we're all going to see, they're all going to look at a self-employed the same way. And they're going to want to see continuance of business. So we're going to look at your last 1 to 2 years of tax returns. That depends on the length of history of your business. So 1 to 2 years of tax returns. And then we're also going to look at your year-to-date profit and loss, your year-to-date balance sheet, and then the last 2 months of your bank statements to show that you've had a consistent amount of deposits that mirrors the P&L and the balance sheet. So as long as your business is the same or growing from last year, you're going to be great. If it's declined or you were kind of beaten up by COVID and you're just starting to pick back up again, we might need a little bit more time under our belt before we can qualify. But I can go through that one-on-one if anybody has any questions.
All right, I'm going to do a check here to make sure that everybody can hear me with my mask on. Kim's computer was delayed, so we're going to be distanced and safe here. So I just want to make sure if you guys can give me a thumbs up that you can hear me.
Can hear you fine.
Fantastic.
Okay, great.
Fantastic. So we are actually going to jump ahead here to choosing the right realtor. And I know Kim was talking a little bit about this beforehand. I certainly want to turn it back over to Kim to add a few items. And then, of course, I have a couple of things that I wanted to add. Just some comments as well. So go ahead, my dear.
Thanks, Brian. So some of the things that I wanted to talk more about is make sure your realtor has good knowledge of the market, especially now. It's critical. Things are so competitive right now. If they are not familiar with what homes should be selling for and what you need to do as far as an offer, it is going to hurt you and you may lose out on the home. And, that's important in a normal world, but especially now, make sure you're asking them, how well do you know this neighborhood? Have you done business in this neighborhood? What are homes selling for? So make sure that realtor has knowledge of the market. The next thing is availability. I mean, this is huge. Ryan and I, we are available 7 days a week between the two of us, and I know most agents are. So this is a question to ask your realtor. It's very important to find out what their availability is before you get out in your house hunt. Because if they have not told you that they're not working after 6 p.m., you may be frustrated if you're trying to get in to see a house and can't get a hold of them. So make sure you find out what their availability is. Fees. We get this question all the time. What is it going to cost me to have you represent me? And we are paid by the sellers. So you do not have to pay us anything when we are being paid by the seller in a transaction. So there is no fee that you have to pay your realtor to get out there and help you. And then questions to ask when interviewing an agent. I would say, can I see your license? I mean, I think that's a legitimate question. I would ask how long they've been doing real estate, where they've been working, how many deals do they do? Just questions like that, really get to know them. Because I think it's really important. The great thing with Ryan and I is we're two different people, so we can relate to our buyers, a little bit differently, each of us. But I think that it's important that you get along with your agent and you actually like being around them. And I think a big one, and we never have to worry about it with Live Urban agents, is honesty and integrity. Our passion is protecting our clients throughout the process and finding them the right home. And we will do whatever it takes to get that job done. We're not gonna throw in the towel because our clients have called and they're in tears or they have a question that they've asked 5 times. Don't be afraid to call and ask us questions. I think those things are really important, but we have a very important job representing buyers, especially now, and we take it very, very seriously. So I hope that helps in kind of wrapping up what a realtor can do for you.
Yeah, I wanna add one thing in regards to honesty and integrity. And really this, as we were planning this discussion, Nicole obviously feels the exact same way that we do on this front. And really, as far as honesty and integrity is concerned, not just obviously that we're going to, help you steer clear of anything that could affect your home purchase, but gosh, to help you set your expectations from the beginning of the process. I think that the worst disservice that we could ever do, whether it be us as realtors or Nicole, would be to look at our clients and say, sure, let's go look at that $500,000 home when realistically they can afford $350,000. I mean, that's going to set the expectation and the tone on a completely false front from the beginning. And, I compare it, I recently had to purchase a new car. And, when you walk onto a car dealership, you can always sniff out the people that are desperate for a sale versus the people that, genuinely want to see you get into the vehicle that's going to suit your needs.
Right.
And finding a realtor is the exact same thing. We like to think that every real estate agent in Denver has the same level of ethics and looks at this job the same way that we do. Unfortunately, that's not the truth. And so, really find a realtor that not only you're going to enjoy working with, but is going to tell you what you need to hear. And sometimes that may not be what you want to hear. Right. But certainly it helps, manage expectations throughout the process. Nicole, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that was perfect. I really don't have anything else to add to that.
All right. I've never had to scream through a mask in an office before, so I'm feeling a little bit self-conscious, but we're going to rock on here kind of to the home buying process and strategies. As I mentioned before, one of the things that Kim and I love most about about being realtors is educating people on the market, obviously helping them buy and sell properties, but gosh, also to understand what in the heck you're actually doing along the way, right? And so one of the things that I love most, generally when we meet with clients, the first meeting is kind of like an awkward first date meeting. You both sit down. Sometimes we have to tell people what we're wearing.
Buy people
it's
a
very
drink.
strange. Buy people a drink. Look for the closest exit in case it gets weird. But I mean, really, the first meeting is kind of talking about ourselves and talking about are we gonna gel well with you? And we're the first ones to say if we don't feel that relationship or if we don't feel like we're gonna work well together, it's totally fine. It does not hurt our feelings to hear.
No.
Guys, I don't think that the jive was there. That's totally fine. The second meeting that we do, I always say is our beer and wine meeting, because we sit down and we go with buyers through the contract from start to finish. It is so important before you get out in this market with this pace to sit and know and understand what you're doing before you get into a situation where you have to frantically try to come up with a number and an offer, and has your lender given you what they need? It's a disaster. And so, one of the things that we love most, we call it the beer and contract meeting. And, it's probably, if we're being honest, one of the most boring meetings that people have ever sat through in their life. But on occasion, we do have people that really sit and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, right? And there's ways that we can enhance and sweeten a deal for you when we write an offer. And you really have to understand how all of the parts of the offer work together, right? So the education piece is super, super, super important. And I always think that is the very first piece of the process that you should have. In addition to that, kind of hand in hand with that, as both Nicole and Kim mentioned earlier, having that relationship and getting everything locked up with your lender. Really, in this market, you should understand what you're doing and you should have your financing figured out before you get in the car and you start going out and looking at properties. I've been doing this, now for 16 years. Kim has been doing this for 16, however many years. And one of the mistakes that we always see people make is they get out and inevitably they always fall in love with the first property that we look at. I don't know if it's Murphy's Law. I don't know if it's some kind of weird real estate thing. But man, it's so hard if you find the property that you love, but you're not prepared to offer on it to walk away from it. So
right. It's hard. It can be heartbreaking, and it's heartbreaking for us. And the other piece of having that lender tied in with us tightly is that once we shoot that offer over, that lender gets on the phone and talks to that seller's agent. And that is very, very important right now. And that just has to get done. So that's going back to that lending piece, which we're probably going to really hammer on because it's so important right now.
So basically kind of a quick overview of the process, and I'm going to do the quickest Cliff Notes version of this that you will ever hear. Obviously, you're going to get all of that stuff locked in place first. Then we're going to go do the fun stuff. We're going to get in the car. We're going to do the HGTV stuff. So we're going to go around. We're going to look at properties. We're going to talk about what you like, what you don't, explore different neighborhoods. I think it's really important, obviously. One of the biggest parts of our job is to help people get educated on neighborhoods, even more so sometimes than the homes that they're buying, because that's such an integral part of your living experience is your neighborhood. So we do that, we identify the property, and everybody gets super excited because you want to make an offer. So what we're going to do, obviously, we're going to review the prices that other similar homes have sold for in the neighborhood. We do comp research. That's a huge part of our job to make sure that we know what's an appropriate price to offer and what does our strategy have to be. So we're going to look at all of that stuff. We're going to write up an offer that we've already reviewed with you in the educational piece first. And then we're going to go ahead, we're going to submit the offer. In an ideal world, we will assume that your offer is accepted. The very, very first thing that you're going to do at that point, you're going to deliver your earnest money, which again is kind of like your security deposit on the contract. It gives the contract some teeth so that both parties know that people are dedicated to that contract. You're going to deliver the earnest money and you're going to have a home inspection. That generally happens within the first, I would say, 7 days max of going under contract. You definitely want a professional to come in and assess the condition of the home. So obviously you're going to do that. So it seems like in the beginning of the process, there's all of these moving plates up in the air. You're looking, then you're under contract, then you're looking at the home and you're doing your inspection. And then once you've gotten past the inspection, you're going to be working very closely with your lender to continue getting whatever documents you need to get to them. From our angle, at that point, the process simmers. It goes from a constant boil to a little bit of a simmer, because what we're waiting on that point is the appraisal. And the appraisal, again, is basically a third-party estimate of value of the property that is ordered by your lender in order to ensure that the amount that they're lending on the property actually matches the value of the home. So, sometimes we have to negotiate. Sometimes there's a purchase price here and the appraisal's right here. So we have ways to deal with that. Sometimes we have to get creative, but you can definitely move through that. Also during this time, again, you're getting your documents to your lender. You're probably packing because it starts to get safe, that you can know that there's an end in sight. And then obviously the biggest celebration is when we all sit at the closing table, you fill out your documents and you get the keys. Right. From start to finish, generally, that is, I would say, from the time that you go under contract until closing, about 3 to 4 weeks in this market, give or take a few days. So just planning, accordingly. Now, if you're competing, which does happen, sometimes we have to push those dates, and sometimes we have to speed the process up a little bit. That's all dependent on what the market is doing, how quickly appraisals are coming in, and really the demand and the level of competition that you're working with.
Yeah, and just know that as your realtor, we are watching those dates and deadlines, and that's not something that as the buyer you have to take on and worry, am I missing this deadline? When should I get the appraisal? When should I do the inspection? that's all something that we are going to navigate and watch for you.
I think it can't be stated enough. Obviously our job is not just to help you get the home, but my gosh, if you're putting $3,500 or $5,000 down as a security deposit on a home, our biggest job is to be like guard dogs that are guarding your earnest money to make sure that if you do, heaven forbid, have to terminate a contract, that we're doing it within the dates in the contract that it's acceptable to do so, to make sure that you can get your earnest money back. Tips to guarantee success. Gosh, I just think so much of this is about having realistic expectations. I think we're definitely going to get to our conversation about the market as more of a round robin. So I'm going to save that portion of the conversation for that. What to expect throughout the process. I hope that I went over that in great enough detail. Again, sometimes it feels like you've been shot out of a cannon at the beginning of the transaction, but it does kind of start to simmer down as we get past the first, I would say, 1 to 2 weeks of the process. And then what happens after closing? I think that this is something important to remember is, a lot of people, especially if this is your first home purchase, you're used to having a landlord that will fix things and that will make sure that your furnace filters are changed. And your utilities are on. And, I think it's important to remember that you are taking on the responsibility of home ownership. Obviously, with that comes so many incredible things. But, expect a little bit of an adjustment if you have been renting going into home ownership, because you don't have anybody to call to change the light bulbs over your kitchen vanity anymore. Do you have anything to add, Nicole?
I have to find the mute button. It keeps hiding from me. I think what you're talking about, this whole expectation of wrapping up all of your expectations around how much money will you have after closing. I have that conversation all the time because you do want money just in case, because it is your home and you want to furnish it and you'll have to take care of it. And so having that realistic conversation with your realtors, with your lender, and making sure that not only do you understand the process, but at the end, how much money will you have to bring to the table? How much money will you have left over in your pocket is such an incredibly important conversation to have. And everything that you're bringing up, Ryan, is just spot on. And it's just about knowing all of this up front. I know what Ryan and Kim and what I'm talking about is like so much, right? But it's about being able to sit down with your team and really ironing it out for you specifically, that it gives you the confidence to go through this process without stress and anxiety. Because this should be an incredible opportunity, not one where you get finished and you're like, I'm exhausted and that was awful. You shouldn't feel that way. This whole presentation is just really about, wow, there's a lot to cover and we're trying to squeeze it all into an hour. And Ryan and Kim are going so thorough and so incredible. But ultimately, you want to be able to have those conversations and you want to have some money in your pocket at the end, bottom line.
So I'm going to actually, since Nicole kind of has the floor at the moment, we really want to switch gears here and talk less about the nuts and bolts. I think that is obviously, we are all available should you have questions or obviously want to meet with us and talk about the process and answer questions and all of that. That's something that we love to do. But I think we want to shift gears here and kind of talk about some of the pink elephants in the room. We want to talk about what's happening in the economy. We want to talk about what's happening in the Denver market and what's happening, heaven forbid, obviously, with COVID-19 and why Kim and I are sitting here looking like Hannibal Lecter right now. So, I definitely want to kind of toss it over to Nicole first to talk about what's happening with interest rates, Nicole, and the economy.
I adore you. Okay, so what's going on with interest rates? Gosh, right? That's the $1 million question. If I had my magic 8-ball, I would tell you that interest rates are going to, so here's what interest rates are doing in general. So right now they're historic lows, 2.75, 2.875, 2.99, If it has a 2 handle, it is almost free money, which allows you to be able to afford more. So if you were looking at purchasing a home last year when rates were in the 3s, you should be talking to your lender again, because what you can afford today is probably considerably more, probably 10% more, in fact. And it could just edge you into that next neighborhood that you wanted to be into, or that next price point. So interest rates are going to stay low for a while. The Federal Reserve would like to keep interest rates low for the next 2 to 3 years. They've made that claim. They don't dictate exactly where interest rates go, but they do have a handle on it because they're purchasing mortgage-backed securities. It's not on the Fed rate, although that's at 0. It's on how many mortgage-backed securities they purchase, which dictates a supply and demand in the bond market. I don't want to go down to that rabbit trail too far, but just to say they do have a hand on whether or not interest rates go up. You also have things like the economy strengthening and inflation. Inflation will make interest rates go up. And if we find a vaccine, the stock market and the economy will bolster again, and that will again increase inflation, which will increase interest rates. So what I tell my clients is that if the interest rate today makes that purchase make more sense to your budget, then let's look at buying now. Let's not wait, because there are some unknowns with the election and with the vaccine. But I expect that rates will be in the high 2s to low to mid 3s for the next several years. In fact, it's going to be a good interest rate market for us. It could just pop up a little bit off the bottom.
So, fabulous news. We love hearing that, because obviously the price of borrowing money stays relatively low.
Yes.
Let's address how that affects competition now. Because one of the things that we are seeing in Denver, and certainly in the surrounding areas, is because it is, interest rates are at such all-time lows, Denver also, to kind of piggyback on that, also has record lows in inventory. And so if you hear a lot about the competition that's happening in Denver's market, basically what has happened is we have a record low of inventory based on so many people getting into the real estate market, which obviously then means that there's more people that can purchase and are looking for homes and less homes to purchase. Now, having said all of that, Kim and I would not be successful realtors, and Nicole wouldn't be have a job anymore if we weren't able to help people strategize to be able to overcome that. So, yes, there is high competition. Yes, to be completely honest, it's very realistic that you may have to offer on 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 homes before you can find the magic one that you're able to get your offer accepted on. But that does not mean that it's absolutely impossible. And we certainly want to plow through that notion that, oh God, the market is too hot, I can't get into it. You need to have good strategies and a good game plan, and you know what, we can certainly help you.
Right. You have to have the right team behind you, and I think that's another question. Is you're talking to your realtor, how are you prepared to help me compete in this market?
Absolutely.
Especially with, and this kind of moves on to the effects of COVID-19. It was a hot market before COVID-19. And now with everybody working from home and relocating from the West Coast and the East Coast, because who wouldn't want to live in Colorado, except if we didn't have the smoke. But, we're seeing even more of a wave of people migrating to Colorado. So we are prepared to deal with that. And that's something that you want to make sure that your realtor is prepared to do as well.
The other thing, I know I joke about this a lot, with our masks and those kinds of things, but gosh, please do yourself a favor and find professionals to work with that take what we're dealing with seriously. It is Live Urban protocol that anytime we go into a house, we have masks on, we have gloves on, we have sanitizer, we have all of the precautions to keep you and us safe, as well as the seller and the listing agent. And, we do see, unfortunately, we see people that kind of bend the rules in this market. And, I just can't stress enough that at the end of the day, you know, it's worth your health, it's worth our health. And so, you know, these kinds of things, if you are going to be out, make sure that you're prepared with the proper PPE to be out looking at properties. And if you don't have it, you know, we provide that for our buyers as well. The last thing that I wanted to talk about on this topic was just market seasonality. And, you know, one of the advantages typically that people, especially buyers in the market, are kind of waiting for those little gem moments in the market where there's less competition. And, you know, oftentimes they can happen around holidays. They can certainly happen when the snow starts flying. We have seen an uptick in winter sales. And sales that happen at the beginning of January and December. So don't be deceived that there's not going to be any competition. But gosh, you know, it may be a really good idea if you aren't going to be able to travel for Thanksgiving or for Christmas to say, hey, is it possible for us to get out and look at some properties when there's not as many people? We've gotten many people under contract just kind of by diving in on times when, you know, maybe everybody else is in front of a television or doing something celebrating the holidays. So, you know, definitely take that into consideration and use that as a trick that you can use. Last but not least, before we hit everybody up for questions, we wanted to move on just to, I guess, from Nicole's perspective and from our perspective, some of the biggest mistakes that we see first-time home buyers or any home buyers make, both in lending and in home buying. So I'm going to cut back to Nicole for the first portion of this.
So Ryan had said my very first mistake, Ryan had mentioned earlier, but I really want to make sure that this is we accentuate this, is don't go shopping for the home before you talk to the lender. There's nothing worse than falling deeply in love with that $600,000 home when what you can afford and or what's in your budget is a $450,000 home. And maybe you can even afford that $600,000, but you didn't realize what the monthly payment would be, or what the taxes in that area is, or what the HOA does to your payment. So looking at the whole spectrum and understanding how the finances come together to make that monthly payment and or the down payment will make a big difference on what you want to go look at, because you really want to make sure you're looking at the right price point. And then don't take no for an answer. If one lender tells you that you cannot buy, or you can't buy at a certain price point, or you can't do it now, then make sure you get a second opinion, much like a doctor. My team, we don't say no, we say not yet. We help give our clients the advantage to a strategy. How can we get them from the no to a yes? And what does that path look like? So don't just take no and go rent for 5 years. Find out what the strategies are to get you on the path to yes. And maybe it's right away, and maybe it'll take a little bit of time, but make sure you do a little bit more digging if somebody right off the cuff says no. And then I would say keep your lender in the loop. If you have any job history changes, or your job, or you're getting a raise, or maybe you're going from full-time to part-time, you got a new ding, maybe you had a medical collection that just came onto your credit report that you didn't know about, or some other change is going to affect your affordability or is going to affect your credit, make sure your lender knows, because there might be ways to get around that. We've absolutely been able to get people at a closing table that had a job change in the middle of purchasing a home. Not ideal, but it's happened. Or if you have to purchase a car because your car broke down, talk to your lender about what that's going to do to both your credit score and your budget. And then what I'd say too is don't delay, right? Get that upfront opinion so that you know what you can and can't do. You know if you have to fix your credit, you know if you have to strategize before you can go shopping for a home. Don't, and I get these calls probably more often than I'd like, or that you think that would happen, is I get the call from the house, the realtor's showing them, and they're just now getting pre-approved for the first time. Don't fall in love with that house before you know for sure that it fits not only in your budget, but you can afford it.
Awesome, my friend. Awesome. We're going to attack now from the buy side.
Right.
Take it away, Kim.
Okay, 5 common mistakes in home buying. I bet you could all answer number one, not getting pre-approved before you shop. Super important. We don't need to go into that anymore. I think we beat it to death, but that is very important. Number two, not having an experienced agent represent you, especially now. And I'm sure you can understand the importance, why that's so important. It's great to help out friends that just got out of real estate college. It really is. But right now, at the pace of the market, you do need an experienced agent. Number three, holding out for the perfect home. We see this happen a lot where people have this dream home, which is fine. But what we as agents try to do is open their eyes to see maybe different things that they might love about a home that they potentially could get under contract on. You know, you can make it the perfect home. If we purchase it right, you can find a home with great bones and make it your perfect home. But if you're holding out for all of the checks in all of your boxes, that's probably not going to happen. Number four, and we see this a lot for people that aren't familiar with the market, making a low ball offer in a competitive situation and offending the seller. So things can go downhill really quickly if the seller gets a low ball offer in this market and just won't want to work with us.
And I'm going to piggyback on that. You know, you never know if you go in and you don't handle yourself professionally, or you go in and you try to negotiate and you're trying to ram what you want down somebody's throat. If you don't get that home, you never know whether or not the next home that you want is going to have the same listing agent.
Right.
It does happen. So, you know what I mean? Make sure that you know that Denver, even though it's a big city, is still a small city. So make sure that you're doing things
Right, and taking your agent's advice on where you should come in with an offer. And then finally, number five, this is a big one, allowing non-professional opinions to influence your decision making. So an example of that, we've had buyers that have taken opinions of loved ones over, say, contractors on what things are going to cost or what they may be looking at in a repair. And they have friends and family chime in, and before they know it, they're so confused that they can't make a logical decision. So we love them, but for friends and family, I would just, give them very minimal information and say, I have a professional team on my side that are licensed and experienced in helping me make these decisions. So that would be number five. And really, I mean, I think there's probably a few more, but those are the top mistakes that we see, repeatedly now these days. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. It's hard because everybody wants to help and everybody truly loves and cares about your decision. But sometimes when you have 20 voices telling you what to do, it can just make you crumble. So really try to keep your sphere as close as possible. So I am seeing we are right at 5 p.m. here. And I'm looking at Laurel, our moderator, and wondering if, in the spirit of the debate season, if I'm going over too much on my time.
I think you're fine. You're right at 5, and we had some technical difficulties. But I think we could definitely open up to questions. We have none in the chat, so feel free to type them in if you have them, or just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question.
I think that we threw so much information at everyone in such a quick time. People are feeling numb and wondering where their glass of wine is at this point.
Right. So it might be a good time to, just tell everybody that, we are here at Live Urban. We're here for you. We're professional and we will do our very best to be there for you throughout your home buying process. And if you have any questions after this, you can reach out to any of us and we're, willing to spend some time with you and talk. And we just, appreciate you and hope that everyone is staying safe and, that life is going okay for you right now.
Yeah. I always like to tell people too, no question is a dumb question. The only dumb question is the question that you don't ask until it's too late, and then you're, as one of our admins always likes to say, your car is wrapped around the tree instead of trying to correct before you hit the tree. So, please never think that any of these questions are stupid or, I should know the answer. We would much rather go over them as many times as needed to make sure that you have what you need so that you're successful.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for allowing me to come join you today, Kim and Ryan. It was a pleasure. And there's always more questions up front than you think there possibly could be answers. But as you step through it, when you're partnered with good people, the home ownership allows you to build wealth in a way that no other investment can, through appreciation, through principal reduction, through safety and security, and also giving you wealth building for multi-generations. So this really it's the time to stop paying somebody else's mortgage and stop building somebody else's wealth and start building your own. And it was just a pleasure to be involved with this. So thank you so much.
Well said.
Thanks so much, Nicole.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Reach out
guys.
if you'd like a copy of the slides or any more information.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week.